Thank you. So welcome to Helping Middle Managers Become Productive Leaders webcast. And I'm your host, Sally Foley-Lewis. That sounds like a radio show. I've never said that before for a webcast, but there you go. That's me. Now, if you have any technical difficulties, please do pop them into the chat box, play around with the control panels and have some fun making yourself familiar with how this is Zoom and how it works for you. I will tell you that in my experience that I do allow my four-legged office assistants to roam free around my office during webcasts, because I find that when I lock them out, they let everyone know how unhappy they are. So when it comes to looking after my own staff, be it the four-legged kind, they tend to rule the roost around here, and they're much quieter when they can have free rein. So if they do happen to have a little bit of a chat to you in the background, I will apologise for that in advance. When it comes to productivity, it's about understanding what systems and processes are going to make you a more effective person. It's going to help you get your work done smarter and faster with a lot less stress. And, I have been having a lot of conversations with senior leaders, and they often say to me that all they want is for their managers to take some responsibility for themselves. And I don't think that's meant in a negative connotation, that they're not, but they want them to feel empowered, to have more ownership, and also step into more personal power and positional power with their direct reports, so that they're getting more involved. Ideas are being generated, that the managers and the teams are actually willing to collaborate more. And when I think of that, about that willing to collaborate, what that says to me is about taking a seat at the table, standing up and standing out for all the right reasons, and be willing to lead initiatives, which to me it's like permission is granted. What are you waiting for? Meg Wheatley, who wrote a phenomenally great book quite a while ago now, but it's The Art and Science of Leadership, I think is the title. Meg Wheatley. She goes by Meg, but her name is Margaret Wheatley. And she has this great line of proceed until apprehended. And I love that. And I think that's so important that as senior leaders, and as managers as well, when you're talking to your team or your management team, it's proceed until apprehended. What permission are you waiting for? Because 98% of the population, 98% of the people we work with really want to do a good job. Their intentions are absolutely positive and pro for the organisation. So it's about having to be explicit with that sometimes, and also about staying current. And I think that's never been more important than ever before, this whole need to stay current. We're moving into an AI, disruptive technologies world, and so I think it's absolutely critical that our managers, and therefore our whole organisation, is staying current. I was doing some research, and it's quite interesting that 38% of CEOs in a survey stated that they were extremely concerned about the availability of key skills. So with digital transformation being so rapid, the concern CEOs have is that the organisation is going to be left behind, that they won't have the right skills amongst their people in order to stay competitive and to keep growing the business. And interestingly, being able to maintain and recruit people was a big key concern for CEOs. That 84% struggling to recruit the right talent. This was a piece that was surveyed of HR senior leaders. And that's a huge number, 84% struggling to recruit the right talent, especially while we have this tightening of the labour market, especially while there are more jobs than people out there, and moving into that gig economy or project to project kind of work. And we have a lot more freelance workers in virtual office spaces. So I think that's a really interesting thing that's happening. As well as some other research showed that 70% of issues senior HR leaders are having issues with keeping their high performers, which means that the retention issue is also massively important. And interestingly, out of that, while we're having this huge problem, not only recruiting but also keeping high performers, what's happening is that on the flip side is that when you talk to the employees, 92% of them are actually really keen to have what they call a workplace experience. And interestingly, when we talk about workplace experience, it's not actually ping pong table and bean bags and office games and stuff like that. It's more about having a flexible and remote working arrangements. It's about valuing and recognizing staff and having that be part of the culture as opposed to an add-on. Well-being programs are really big. Asking and listening to the views of the team. And so as a senior leader, are you asking questions and listening to the views of your management team? And as a manager, are you also doing the same with your direct reports? And so don't guess. Actually stop trying to guess what's going on and ask and listen for the views. That was really quite an interesting workplace experience, which I think, to me, should be par for the course. And I know that we would all like to probably have our views expressed and feel as though we're being heard and valued at work. So I think that's a really interesting one there. And then the other piece that's come up to it was also that organisations, and this is a push that senior HR leaders could probably look at, and the senior leaders of any organisation could look at, is really being clear that the needs of a 17-year-old are not going to be the same as the needs of a 70-year-old in your organisation. So stepping back and looking at those generational shifts and different ways in which you can be supporting the different cohorts that are in your organisation. Because underpinning all of this, when you look at these sort of statistics, it absolutely impacts on productivity. It absolutely impacts on people's productive leadership. If you can't keep the right people because you're constantly recruiting, then you don't have time to actually sit down and get the work done. You see time and money flying out the doors and out the windows because it's all been invested into the recruitment, as opposed to getting work done and staying competitive in the market and staying current. So it's a really obvious connection as I see it. And I think what all this leads to is that we have a lot of senior leaders spending a lot of time guiding and directing and supporting and telling their management team, rather than directing them to be more self-sufficient and skilling and developing them to step up and be the leaders that the senior leaders want them to be. We see leaders and some managers as well getting caught in the minutiae of the day. And so when you get pulled down into the weeds, it means that you're not being able to get on and do your own work. And that shows up in things like endless meetings, really long hours, and taking work home, which means that there's less fun and there's less family time. And what that also leads to is increase in fatigue and decision fatigue. So the longer the hours you work, the more tired you're going to be, the less accurate, the less clear, the less speed you're going to have as you move through a week, which means your productivity is absolutely impacted. And I think what that means for a lot of people at that senior level, a lot of people who have influence over company decisions, is where they can start to feel like they're being ineffective. And when that starts to happen, it's that imposter syndrome. Am I cut out for this? Or what's the impact this has on my reputation within the company if I'm supposed to be a leader in this company and I can't get people to stay? I can't keep good staff, and I can't keep good staff long enough in order to develop them. Then what does that make me look like? And I know it's not necessarily all about me, but we all go there. We all want to make sure we have a great reputation, and we all don't want to be seen to be ineffective. But I think that's what happens. And I think the more senior you go, the more visible you are across an industry as well. So it has that broader industry impact. And you know, we've got some pretty burnt out, tired, exhausted leaders and middle managers. And, you know, something needs to change around this. Something needs to stop and start developing people and start giving people permission to step into their own leadership. And that doesn't necessarily mean an organisational title of leadership. What I'm talking about here is a behaviour of leadership. And I think that's really important. Is there any other things that you can think of that are really impacting our current day-to-day when it comes to helping our middle managers be more effective? If you have something, pop it in the chat box. If you want to come off mute, let me know. Okay, so I just looking through the questions that I asked when you registered, and we've got some people who do have, you know, quite a few direct reports, and we've got others who have maybe only one or two or even no direct reports at this stage in their career. But it's interesting that the blocks to productivity are not just you down the line, but it's also being able to manage upwards. And I like some of the issues here are what's one of the biggest blocks to productivity, and that's the directors. And I think that's true. It can be a real block at times. Indecision. What else have we got here? Taking responsibility and using the initiative. That's a big one, definitely. So yeah. Thank you for sharing those. So an interesting point, not a title, but behaviour for other staff. Yes, absolutely. I'm a big believer that leadership is a personal thing and it shows up in your behaviour. I think that, you know, someone can lead from behind or from the front, depending on the context and the environment and the resources that you have at your disposal. I know we have other views around, and there's plenty of definitions of what leadership is, but to me, I see it as a behaviour. So staff compliance initiative is difficult. So yes, I think that's something that's really quite interesting. Leanne, I just want to ask you, do you mean staff are not complying, or staff are just doing the bare minimum and not taking any initiative? Because you've got staff compliance initiative is difficult. Staff bare minimum, right? Cool, thanks. Yeah. So I'm here for a short time and to get my pay, and that's it. So yeah, and I think there's an engagement. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, sorry. I hear your pain even though I can't hear you. So I think there's a really interesting piece there around engagement. And I was running a change program, helping some leaders move through change yesterday in Sydney. And it was interesting that we all agreed that at some point, when a leader or a manager uses every tool in their toolkit to help boost engagement and to increase ownership for that employee to step up and enjoy their job more and have a greater sense of ownership, there's going to be a point at which you have to draw a line in the sand and say, look, I've used every tool in my toolkit to help engage you in this job. If you're not interested, just let me know, and that's okay. I want you to be in the right job that makes you happy, that makes you want to jump out of bed every day and be there. And if it's not here, that's okay. You know, there's no hard feelings about that. And I think that's a really important conversation that you might have to have at some stage. So it doesn't make it any easier. Again, it's back down to the recruiting again. But I think that it's a conversation that you need to have that in your back pocket ready to go, because there's only so much energy, time and resources you can put into people if they're not going to come halfway as well. So I'm happy to have another conversation with you about that as well, going further, Leanne, if you want to. So when I look at our managers and where they sit and how they show up in a workplace. At the bottom of this particular model that I've got, we've really got the focus of who the person is. If we've got a technical expert, then they're really task focused, and you hire them for their technical expertise. And usually what happens in organizations is that this person does so well that we then promote them into manager. Now, on my model, I've actually moved it to the right as opposed to up. And the reason why I've done that is because we haven't actually built the skills in for the manager to have the people management skills necessarily in place, unless we've actually done some sort of succession planning, a high potential development program, or any sort of leadership skills with them. So the manager on the right hand side, they're either an operations person or a strategy person, and usually what they're trying to do is build operations and strategy together, and trying to let go of their technical expertise and become more of a people manager. So it's really clunky and really difficult for some people. For other people, they couldn't have got there fast enough and they absolutely love it, which is fine. And then you've got other managers who are just sort of simmering along, not too sure what they're doing, just know that they could be doing it better. And I think one of the biggest things that I see when I'm talking with middle managers, especially when I have the opportunity to say, look, this is a safe room, I really want to know from you, are you actually happy being a manager? And most of the time, I'll get at least some people in that room saying, I hate this role. I want to go back to my technical expertise. And I think what we need to do is make space for people to actually go back into their technical expertise. Help people to be happy again, because when we're happy, we're productive. When we're doing what we do well and we know we do it well, that's when we're going to deliver the best for the organisation. And so while I know that might have a negative connotation around it, I think people need to be exactly where they feel as though they can offer the most value. And that's when we get the most value out of them. You know, but beyond that, though, when we've got people who really want to step up and to be more productive and be in the more senior roles, to be more people leaders, people managers, then we need to be looking at how we can make productive leadership a reality for them. And so that's the approaches we might take are coaching, some productivity assessments and some systems analysis, looking at their self-leadership and their team leadership, how they can direct their team and guide their team. And what we're looking for then is the result, which means we get a sense of flow. You know, when you're in your flow, you have almost no sense of time, but you're just achieving and you feel great, and you feel as though the whole world has just disappeared around you and you're just getting on with it. And if you can feel like that and you can help your team and your management team feel like that, then you're going to get better results. You're going to have boosted confidence and more contribution. And you and your team are going to feel and be valued because you'll be able to see it more obviously. So that's something to think about in when you look at where you might be with regards to your own role, or where you're looking at your management team and where they could be. And also, if you're in the situation where you've got some people who you think have the potential to be in management positions and move up the ladder, then it's time to start asking them, you know, what is it they want to achieve, and then start building that capability in them. And the thing is that even if they get to a point at which they are taking on a management role and they find that it's not right for them, helping them to move across or back to their area of expertise doesn't mean that you've wasted money. You've actually probably increased their loyalty. You've given them an opportunity, because those leadership skills that you did invest in them to develop will show up even within their own role. You imagine that if you've got someone who has been with you for a year or two, they've done exceptionally well as a specialist or a technical expert. You promote them because you think that that's the way to recognize them, or that's the way this massive organization I work in does this, and it's very difficult to find other ways to recognize. And so they say yes because they feel a pressure to say yes, and they step into that management role. And so they've been in that role for, say, 12 months now, and they feel as though it's just not gelling for them. And you have a really robust conversation around the development process they've been through, the struggles that they're having, and then maybe they just say to you, okay, I want to step back. I want to go back into my technical role. How can we make that happen? So if together you work on making that happen, what you've actually created is someone who feels valued, and you don't diminish them for wanting to go back to a position that they're actually exceptionally good at. You save money because you actually maintain that skill, and you get the value add because you've built their leadership, because maybe down the track there'll be projects in which they might want to lead projects as opposed to leading teams. So it's a win-win as I see it. So that's just food for thought with regards to that. Is there any comments or questions around that? Okay, so I think I was alluding to this a little bit before when I was talking about simmering along. I think there are three types of middle managers, and this might even apply to staff as well, especially with Leanne, you're talking about people just compliant. You know, there are staff and managers that are stagnating, which means they've probably got a bit of disorder going around in what they do. They're not really clear about the way in which they do their work. They might not have very clear systems. They might not. You look at their desk as an example, and it's probably in a disorderly way, and so they never know where anything is. It takes them a good 5 minutes to find stuff. They faff around a bit, and therefore there's a bit of doubt around what they're doing. And when I see this in managers, it's because they're unclear about what it is they're meant to be doing, and they don't have the confidence to make decisions, and there's a fear of making decisions, or a fear of especially making the wrong decision. So what we get is this diffidence and this standoffishness and a resistance to doing things. So these are the leaders, and it might be that they're stagnating for a whole range of things. You know, they don't want the job, they don't know what to do, the culture of the organisation. They desperately want to be a better leader, but have no idea how to start or where to start. So their own self-awareness might be an issue. So there could be a range of reasons why they're stagnating. The next level is the simmering, where I think we've got some people who just accept where they are. They're just getting on with it. They're just doing what they have to do. You know, they're adequate. And I think this might be some of your staff compliance stuff, if not down and stagnating. But they're okay. You know, the simmering's okay. You know, if they were to get a report card where, you know, 1 to 5, 1 means we've got some big issues, 3 is they're fine, and 5 they're outstanding. We're obviously at the 3. We're at the midway mark, and it's okay. So they're probably coming across as quite amateur. You know, they're just doing what they got to do. And it might not even occur to them that there are opportunities, or there's space for them to add more and value add to what's going on. And then our third group are the soaring. And I think these guys are they've got a sense of control. They own their space. This is my role. This is what I'm here to do. This is how I think I should do it. And I'm sure someone will tell me if I'm doing it wrong. But until I'm apprehended, I'm just going to proceed. So they not only look capable, but because they step up and they have a go at things, they become capable. And therefore, with that comes the confidence. And so, again, like for all three of these, whether they're stagnating, simmering, or soaring, there are some factors, external factors that come into play, such as the organisational culture, such as who their senior leaders are and the way in which they're communicating, giving permission, if there's any micromanaging going on. All sorts of factors can come into play with those. So I think it's a really interesting piece where identifying where someone is with this, and then having a look at, if I've got staff that are stagnating, then my question then is why? Why are they stagnating? What? And then when you know why, that's the bit you can then work on and try and do something about. So that's just some food for thought there with those. Another way of looking at it, which I think is probably moving you towards being creating the work, or creating the necessary tools and resources to actually get people to be more productive, is really knowing whether you've got a manager or an employee who wants out, or who wants to stay and just do better, or who wants up. And so we've either got managers or employees who want to move, improve, or be removed. And now I really think, before I get into move and improve, that I will talk about the remove again, because I know I mentioned it before. I really want to bring home that point that it's okay for people to go, and helping people leave is not a bad thing. Helping people to be in the right job, at the right organisation, at the right time, for the right price, is absolutely a caring. It's giving. It's also setting up for your own organisation to have a reputation that supports people. And who knows, this person, whoever wants to get out, gets out, gets more experiences elsewhere, and may come back as the right version that they need to be. And that's because you've helped them leave with dignity. I think that's a really important one. The other two, though, and this is where we've got managers who love what they do, or staff even that love what they do. They don't want to climb a ladder. They just want to know that what they're doing is the most productive way of doing things. This is is what I do making a difference? Is the way I do it the most productive way, the most efficient, effective, cost-effective way? I don't want another job title. I just want to be a valued and valuing contributor to this organisation. And then we've also got the eager beavers. They absolutely want to climb the ladder. They want to get themselves to the C-suite as fast as they can. And this is where we move into the middle of this diagram and focus on what it is that they need in order to achieve the outcomes they want. And so starting at self-leadership and moving around, I think, is the way that you can move through this model that gives you the best outcome for people to become productive leaders. So self-leadership and self-image and self-development are absolutely critical. And underpinning those three areas as you move around this model is making sure there's values are clear and aligned, making sure the vocation is correct. And so maybe it's about the right industry, right job, wrong industry, wrong job. All those sorts of questions get clarified through their development and their own, and how they see themselves. And then their voice. And the reason why I chose the word voice in this model is because it's about confidence. It's about having a voice. It's about speaking up and standing out for all the right reasons. It's about boundaries and being assertive. And that comes through self-development and increased self-leadership. So with that model, what we're aiming for, obviously, is to be a productive leader. So is there any questions around this model? Anything you want to ask, or any observations? If you'd like to come off mute, let me know. Groovy. I think with if someone's typing, what I'll do is just have another few words around the staff compliance. An initiative is difficult. I think when you get a chance to engage with people and ask them what it is they think that they're there to achieve and what they would like to achieve, versus telling them what their role is at times, trying different ways to engage and ask questions and build ownership as a starting point. I think that sets you up for being able to get some insight into what will make that person tick. I don't necessarily want you to kick the person out straight away, but, knowing that you can invite them to look elsewhere is a possibility. But before you get to that, what are the strategies you're doing to get people moving? Very good model, very appropriate for, okay, cool. I'm glad. That's good, Bridget. Thank you. Yeah, and I think, we live in a time where, while we would love our bosses and our organisations to pay for all our development, we know that's not a reality anymore. There's lots of organisations that have a contract arrangement that if they pay for you to do some sort of self-development or professional development, then they want to see a return on that investment. And so I think you stepping up and taking your own control of your own development, I think, is also just as valuable. And it goes with you wherever you go. We have a lot of disengaged staff and we are working hard. Oh, that's good. And I think even if people know that there's an effort being made, that in and of itself, I think, is a real positive as well. People are prepared to sort of get in and persevere with you when they see an effort is being made, even if it wasn't necessarily something that they would have chosen to have happen. The fact that they can see effort, that in and of itself is massive. So that's kind of cool. And interestingly, I mean, it can't be the tokenistic kind of stuff, and I don't for 1 minute think that's what's happening for you, Bridget, but I think, that genuine, authentic care, and when they see that resonates a lot, real lot. So good on you, and happy to have a chat about that if you want to. When we dive into that model a bit more, sorry, I'll just point out that what we'll do is we'll start here and we'll move around this way with the model. Okay, just so you know, as we go through the next slides. So starting at that self-leadership, the self-awareness piece. What's the personality? What drives me and my motivators? Where's my self-esteem and my emotional intelligence? And I think it's really important that managers and even employees, they understand what their style is. And when I talk about style assessment tools, this could be what's their personality style or their behaviour style. There are DISC assessments, and there's Myers-Briggs, and there's a whole range of different tools that can be used. And not that they become the Bible upon which that you all operate, but they are absolutely fantastic resources for building insight. And not just insight into who and what and how you are and how you tick, but also why someone might rub you up the wrong way, and then what you can do to adapt and flex your own communication, your own approaches to things, so that you get a better outcome and a better alignment with other people. So I think that's a really key thing in the self-leadership. Values alignment is also another really critical one, and appreciating and understanding your own values and how they sit alongside with the organisation's values is an exercise that I think very few organisations do, and those that do it, not a lot of them do it well. When they're trying to have a values alignment day, it comes across as really quite tokenistic, and I think that they need to be really careful about the way in which we have conversations around these are the values and you must stick to them, because that doesn't work. You can't impose that upon people. So I think a really clear strategy for understanding individuals' values, and then how do they sit and how do they think they sit and meld well and aligned well with the organisation. And most of the time they actually do. Might not be exactly as we would see it, but when you had that conversation, they will align. And as long as they're aligned, then you've got someone who's willing to, their performance and behaviour is going to be aligned to the organisation, which is what you want. And motivation, I think it's really important that you understand what makes people tick, and you understand what makes you tick as a leader and as a manager, so that when you're working with people, the questions you ask, the engagement that you're aiming for is truly targeting motivation and how you can get people to really engage deeper. And when you understand your own motivators, which can sometimes be really quite aligned to your values, then you know what you're going to be looking for in the way in which you do your work. And when you understand that about yourself, it helps you to see it a lot easier in others at times. So that's that self-leadership piece. The other one is the self-image. And I think this is around unleashing your personal power. And I think that can encompass a lot of things. It's about understanding what your personal power is and building your confidence. And when you've got that confidence and you understand your boundaries, you understand that you've got some good traits and some challenging traits about you, and appreciating that everything about you is of value. And then when it's taken to the extreme, it can actually, get in the way of something's happening. And building on your confidence and your self-awareness means that you're able to influence more effectively. When you can influence, that means that you're networking well. You're what I would call your board of directors. Those people that you spend the most time with are the quality people. They're the people that will respectfully and nurturingly, if that's a word, and caringly challenge you to constantly be the best version of yourself. It's that whole idea of every day is game day. And so how do I show up and bring the best version of me? And the more we do that, the more that muscle is trained to do that. And that means that we're able to speak up at the right time, we're able to contribute more, and we're able to stand out for all the right reasons. And I think that's a really critical piece around self-image. And I just recently did a presentation, a keynote speech on unleashing your personal power. And it was quite interesting that, in the room when we talked about boundaries, some people were really one way or the other, that they felt like they were either missing out on everything because they felt that if that one time they said yes, they're just going to be completely exploited. So they closed in and they closed themselves off, and they made their boundaries so tight that they weren't actually getting any of the goodies. They were missing out. And so I think it's really important that when you look at boundaries, when you look at boundaries, that you pay attention to the benefits that you can get from that. Whereas the other side of the group were saying that they feel exploited, they feel used. And so it's interesting that very few people feel as though they've got a good handle on the right sort of grip on their boundaries. And I felt that was an interesting thing, and that's very much aligned to personal power. So the other thing was, and we did talk a little bit about tribes, and if you're interested in that, then I would really recommend you look up Robin Dunbar, check out his TED talk. He talks about tribes, and the 15 people that are closest to you, that make up and have the most influence on you, are probably the most important people that will help you in what it is you want to do in this world, and to be reaching and fulfilling your purpose and your potential. And this is inner work. It's absolutely the inner work. And I think that it's really hard to, you see a manager or you see a boss who has no self-esteem. How does that manifest itself day in, day out? You've got this boss who somehow managed to get themselves into the top position in an organization with no self-esteem. Their behavior is going to be incredibly interesting. They're either going to be so ineffectual because they can't make a decision, nothing moves as fast as it should, or you're going to have someone who's so worried that things are going to backfire and blow up that they so micromanage. So this is definitely the inner work, and it's absolutely critical for success and being a fantastic, productive leader. So that's the second big area to look at. And the third one is around your skills, and and I think this is where we get into some real clear training and development kind of areas. And this is where I think some of the essential management skills are your interpersonal communication skills and being able to influence others, and also managing up as part of that as well. And listening is hugely important. Being present and listening. We don't give ourselves the gift and and understand the absolute importance of stopping and listening. When we stop and listen, we get so much more, and it actually helps us get faster and be better. So that's all wrapped up in that interpersonal communication. The other piece is feedback, and I've just rewritten my first book, so I rewrote so much of it that it's more than what the book experts tell me. I have to actually rename it and give it a brand new ISBN number. So Successful Feedback is going to be launching in the next week or so, and I think feedback is one of those things that is just we don't do it enough. We struggle with it. We avoid it. We've got all this angst around feedback at times, and when we don't have a simple structure, we don't have a formula or a process, it can make life really, really painful. I had a nurse unit manager I was working with for a coaching program a few years back, and she had avoided a conversation for 2 years. And so what we did was we unpacked the impact that would have on everyone else around. And she said, I think I've lost staff because I haven't handled that. And that's probably true. And that's not about making her feel bad, but I think it's about understanding the impact and maybe making it a little bit more clear to her how important it is that you've got to jump onto situations quickly so that they can be handled, and that includes that feedback conversation. And delegation is another massive one. I think that we've got a lot of leaders and managers who think they delegate well when in actual fact they don't. They are dumping and running, and they're abdicating. Then we've got those who just simply don't delegate because they've either tried it before and it didn't work, or they don't know how. They don't know what to delegate and how to delegate. And so, again, when you know what you're doing with this skill, it becomes a fantastic tool for developing others, for getting rid of work that shouldn't be done anymore and should be done at your level. And you actually can be delighting some people because they could be doing things that they would love to do that you hate doing. So it's a real opportunity for delegation to be far more present in workplaces than what it is. And then there's other skills like decision making and problem solving, and understanding how you are as a decision maker, and using really easy and effective tools and strategies to make decisions and to work through problems. Helping staff, I think, identify a problem is really a big thing. I know that when I've had okay, I'll give you an example of this. And so you might have someone come to you and go, we need more office space. Well, that's actually not a problem that they're presenting. What they're presenting is a solution. When they say, we need more office space, well, I would go back and say, well, why? What's the problem? And then start from the problem. And it might actually be that we've got way too much stuff. The office is cluttered. So pulling it further back to identifying the problem means that there's going to be more options for the solution, not just moving offices. So listening to what people say and asking yourself, was that the solution or was that actually the problem? And then opening that up for more options, because what you can come up with quite often is cheaper alternatives. Coaching skills is another big thing for managers. Being able to ask good questions rather than just telling people what to do and being directive, I think, is one of the biggest things that really increases engagement. And also when coaching is done well, it increases accountability and responsibility. And I could talk about coaching skills all day, but if you're interested in coaching skills, there's a fantastic little book called The Tao of Coaching, T-A-O, of Coaching by Max Landsberg. It's seriously, you can read the book in probably an hour and a half, and he's rewritten it just recently to include more modern things like social media. But to me, it was one of those books that's a keeper. You know, where the pages are turned yellow and the paper stinks. You know, that's the edition that I've got and I love. And I think it's just the best book ever to unpack coaching really beautifully in a story and to help you learn how to coach. So that's the Tao of Coaching. And the other massive skill I think is super important for anybody, whether they're in running their own business, whether they've got a small team or a big team, is actually leading through change. You know, number one, how do you cope with change and being able to lead yourself through change, but also then being able to lead others? This is big, because one of the things I think is hands down the new normal, and that's change. So I think that's just a nutshell of some of the skills that I think that we need to be mindful of building for managers as we move forward day in, day out, to either, you know, just improve in the role we're in, or if we want to move up. I think they are absolutely critical. And again, skills like these would help anyone who wants to be removed as well. You know, if they want to go back to a technical position, there's no harm in them having some of these skills, particularly decision making and problem solving, being able to give feedback and have good quality interpersonal communication. Even if they do move back to their own technical position again, and you maintain them in the organisation, you've got a skilled person there that's really going to be valuable for you. So, is there any questions around this? Any other things you want to ask? Any feedback? Any observations? So, okay. Just if you're writing, what I'll do is I'll just put the next slide up, and I will open it up just to questions. If you're in Brisbane, which only a few of you are, but what's happening on the 26th of September is I'm hosting a dinner which will include some welcome drinks, a beautiful 2-course meal in the Brisbane Club, in the private dining room there, and I'm going to give a presentation. I'm going to go deeper into what I think are 5 essential skills every manager needs to master to achieve more, reduce stress, and take back 2 hours in their day. And have a general discussion around the latest trends and what managers need for the future of work. And I'll be also giving away all my goodies, the Productive Leader and a set of management success cards. And it will be the launch of the Manager to Leader program. Now, this program is based on helping middle managers to become productive leaders. And so it's a blended program of workshop and coaching. And you know, if you're interested in the program itself, just send me type a little yes brochure into the chat box, and I can actually send you a copy of the brochures for you to have a look at. But that's coming up, the spring muster, and if you are in Brisbane and you'd love to come along, please let me know. The link is on the screen there, Middle Managers Muster. It's actually targeted for senior leaders who have to just make those decisions to support middle managers, but also if you yourself are in management and want to sit in and enjoy the conversation and hear the presentation, and absolutely a beautiful dinner, then please, I'm more than happy for everyone to come along and share this with your colleagues. It's going to be a great night. Thanks, Leanne. I'll follow that up with you. If you have any questions, if you want to come off mute, feel free to come off mute. I'm going to pretty much wrap up the content of the webcast now and hang around for a few minutes to see if you have any questions. Oh, that'd be great. Yeah, Bridget, fantastic. Okay. Sad I'm not closer. Yeah, me too. Me too, Leanne. Yes. Yeah. But happy to have a conversation with you about the program, and I'll send through that brochure to you. So thanks for that. Cool. Yeah. Any questions? I'm happy to hang around on the line. I can unmute you all, or you can if you can unmute yourself. You're welcome, Leanne. Yeah. Oh, I'm glad, Bridget. Thank you. Yeah. Okay. You're welcome, Leanne. Leanne and Leanne. It's so cool. All right. Well, it doesn't look like there are any questions. So thank you for participating. Thanks for being on the webcast. I will send out a copy of the recording of this, and we'll follow up with everyone as well. So if you do have any questions, of course, reach out to me. I'm here. I'm happy to help in any way I can. And I will say goodbye for now and have an awesomely productive remainder of your day. All right, everyone. Bye for now.